Greetings, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. We are joined today by Constance Victoria Briggs, the phenomenal author of The Moon's Galactic History. I think we did a little thing about that. But I'm going to read your little bio that you sent to me, which is really nice. Constance Victoria Briggs is an author, researcher, and public speaker on galactic history, cosmic mysteries, UFOs, extraterrestrials, as well as various metaphysical topics. She's the author of Earth's Galactic History and Its Extraterrestrial Connection, The Moon's Galactic History, a look at the moon's extraterrestrial past and its connection to Earth, the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries, Secrets, Conspiracy Theories, Anomalies, Extraterrestrials, and more. This list goes on for freaking ever. And you said you raised kids through all this. Encyclopedia of the Unseen World, The Ultimate Guide to Apparitions, Deathbed Visions, Mediums, Shadow People, Wandering Spirits, and much, much more. Encyclopedia of God, A to Z Guide, Thoughts, Ideas, and Beliefs about God. The Encyclopedia of Angels, an A to Z Guide with nearly 4,000 entries. Do you sleep? Constance has been invited as a guest speaker on several radio shows, podcasts, YouTube shows, and conferences. Shows that she's been featured on include Coast to Coast, AM with George Noory, Earth Ancients, The Leak Project, The Outer Realm, Paranormal Soup, Broadcast Team Alpha, Forbidden Knowledge, Spaced Out Radio, and more. She was also featured on the popular shows of Your Mind Magazine and UNX Magazine. Presenter at the 2021 Total Disclosure Inner Truth Summit and the 2022 Watchers Talk Humanity Unplugged Conference. My favorite, because that's where I met you. She will also be featured in the upcoming Women on the Fringe anthology in spring 2024. And it is Constance's goal to investigate the mysteries of the universe and how they connect to humanity. I'm going to have links in the description below for her Amazon books, website, ConstanceVictoriaBriggs.com. That will also be posted. The Facebook link and your Instagram link will also be there. I will also copy paste what Amazon put on as the description for the Earth's Galactic History. What a fun book.
It really was. It was fun to write. It is a labor of love. Oh my God, I had such a good time and such a passion for everything in there, all the subjects.
Yeah, it shows in your work, though. I mean, and I think that we just had a conversation just before this, that really a lot of the things that you lay out in each one of the sections, it doesn't answer questions. And I think what it does is it puts you in a position to be able to look at things in a way that you can answer your own questions. So you lay out the theories and you can either take one theory over another or make your own up based on pulling together the threads of information that really kind of makes sense. I think there's a lot of comfort in that. But what we kind of talked about beforehand too was really getting your idea of the first few pages in the book was about human origins, and the ETs and the ancient past. And that's kind of like brings us back into the history of what we think based on what you're able to find. What is it and who are we?
Yeah, is there a question there?
Yeah, I mean, so what do you think? How did you kind of put this together for like human origins and the ancient past and ETs? So
basically, you know, when I started this book, people were asking me, you know, a lot of questions because I've been around some time talking about, as you said, you know, for my bios and stuff. And they had a lot of questions, and the questions were all over the place, right? And so basically, I feel like I'm trying to reach people who know nothing of these subjects and and answer their questions and understand what it is that they're looking for. They're looking for our human origins, for example. So I'm trying to say that I try to touch on a lot of places, answer a lot of questions as best as I could, but because we don't have an advanced being sitting in front of us, giving us all the information, we kind of have to think out of the box, look at the information we have and turn it around and in many cases come up to our own conclusions, or like you said, our own theory of what happened, and just keep kind of turning this stuff around. We should be having round tables all the time talking about, I think, the subject in this book. But one of the things I wanted to do was introduce people, like I said, to the information. And so I started at the beginning and, what happened as far as I can tell, and as far as the theories, and brought it all the way up to today as what we're seeing around the Earth by way of extraterrestrials, UFOs, and how it's connected to us.
Right. And I think there are a lot of topics too that you get into a little bit later in the book, which I think really fascinate me as the ocean as the Earth's final frontier, because not a lot of people look in that direction. And we were also talking about how I went to the west side of Michigan and I had the pleasure of talking to a young man who had lived in this little town for his whole life. I think he was probably in, his early 30s. And I said, have you seen anything that has been unusual over the lake since you've been here by Lake Michigan all these years? And he said, oh yeah, I don't talk about it much, but I've seen a lot of things.
So I can tell you that the chapter involving the oceans, and I have to glance, it is chapter 4, I'm glancing at the book. Chapter 4, the oceans, Earth's final frontier, is my favorite chapter. It was the first chapter I started writing for this book, so it's appropriate that you bring that one up first. So we have examined, hardly any of our oceans compared to what we have on Earth. We don't know what's down there. We don't know what's happening. All right. We don't know who or what is there. We've examined more of the moon, which is less than 1% of the lunar surface. Less than 1% of the moon have we explored. And that's more than what we have explored in our oceans.
In our own backyard, basically, yeah.
In our own backyard. And so what's interesting is that the UFO conversation started, they didn't start showing in the 40s, but it really got, hot in the 1940s moving forward. However, today we have information on UFOs, but also USOs, which is underwater submerged object. People today, because we have so many cameras around, are actually taking pictures of, lights in the skies over the water, UFOs over the skies in the water, and then plunging into the water, submerging. So now we know, after all these years, that it wasn't just ships in the sky. There are ships going into the oceans, or UFOs going into the oceans. When we say UFOs, we no longer just mean unidentified flying objects. We really are talking about some kind of spaceship. That definition has kind of changed. And we're seeing those UFOs turn into USOs, where they become underwater submerged objects. And it's been interesting because people have witnessed them as they're standing on beaches, UFOs going into the water. And these things go back, for many, many years. Even Christopher Columbus wrote about them. So, now we've learned today that we have, like I said, not just UFOs in the sky, but UFOs or USOs in the ocean. Now, the question is, who are they and what are they doing there? And that's what I tried to cover as best that I could in chapter 4, even though I could really write a whole book on this thing, right? And if you can let me just elaborate a little, because I know we do, have, find that we have a certain amount of time here.
Oh, you got as much time as you need, sister.
Okay. So, who is in the waters? Who is it that are flying these ships? that even the Navy now are talking about. We've seen them on radar. We've did what we could to find out about them. Well, who are they? So I have some stories in the book that have been declassified by governments, and also one that was a woman who came forward on social media, and this is my favorite story in there. Even though I could not reach her to talk to her, I put her story in because her story kind of validates some of the declassified information. Basically, what she said is she was working with a professional organization, and it was a marine type of organization, and they were sent out to look at beached whales. And they examined these whales, and they learned that the whales had chunks of meat cut out of them. She said that it looked like they used a laser kind of weapon, whoever they were that did this, and took out meat from the whale. Someone was eating whale meat, and she emphasized that it wasn't the people who lived in the area nearby that the whales had come onto the beach this way. So that was so alarming that they decided to bring in specialized equipment. All right, and this was supposed to be a secret. This information she shared, but she said she wanted the world to know, and that the specialized equipment picked up humanoid beings under the ocean, or in the deep waters of the ocean. She said, "I swear to you that they had weapons, and when they brought in the specialized equipment that they put in a submersible and sent it down there and discovered these beings, that these beings fired on the submersible." And she said they also discovered vehicles, and they discovered habitat. And she said that these guys didn't swim like fish. They weren't mer people. They didn't swim like us. They moved very quick and very sharply, and was like something she'd never seen before. And that they had these incredible suits on that seemed to be moving. I think she described it as some kind of like mercury moving, and just something so out of sci-fi. And so I put that in there, even though I couldn't talk to her and I couldn't really source her, because of a couple of incidents that came out of Russia. Russia declassified their UFO and USO documents. And in one of them, it talked about, and this is a very famous story, by the way, you can Google this, these beings who showed up one day when Russia's naval people, or naval men, or naval academy were training in the ocean, and they spotted these beings, and they were startled, of course, and freaked out, and they came out of the water. They were in the deep ocean, and they came out, and they reported it to their superior officer, and he sent them back in to try to apprehend them. A long story short, and they did try, and these beings fired on them in some way. They were sent out of the water. I can't remember if it was a weapon or how they did it, but they went flying out of the water, and 2 of them died. The few others were injured. And so it sounded, very similar, because they were saying that their outfits looked very advanced. They were saying that the suit they had on looked advanced. And I'm just wondering if it were the same beings that this other lady had described. So not only that, but there was an account where people were seeing a UFO over the waters, and you could see the beings coming down and going into the water and doing whatever, and just ignoring the surrounding people watching them. So, I mean, this is very interesting. There are things going on in our ocean. We don't know who's down there. We don't know what's down there. Are they extraterrestrials, which would be beings that are from Earth, but still very extraterrestrial-like to us because we are on the surface? Or are they extraterrestrials that came from space and made a home in Earth's oceans? Maybe they had a dying sun and they were trying to escape their planet. They found here. Maybe they're here to study us. And this is the best place to be in the oceans because they're away from us, you know. And I do want to say just one more thing about this chapter. And I'm not sure that I actually put this in there. I did talk about the nomos. The nomos are extraterrestrials who visit the Dogon tribe in South Africa in ancient times. And the Dogon people are famous for having said that extraterrestrials visited them in ancient times and gave them information about the solar system that we hadn't even learned about. All right. But how do I tie this in? Well, the Dogon said that the Nomo, these extraterrestrial beings, came down in a ship. They described the ship and they said that the beings in it were aquatic. The Nomo were aquatic. They could live on land and they could live in the ocean. And long story short, the last that I heard of what they said about the Nomo is they retreated into the ocean. And my question is, are these Nomo the same beings that are being talked about that people are seeing down there? Maybe, maybe not, but it certainly is a good question.
Yeah, and you do have that in there because I remember reading that actually a couple of times because I've grazed through those bits and pieces of the highlights and all that. So
Wasn't that exciting? Yeah, I write a lot, so I can't remember what book is what. I'm working on a couple of new books. I'm like, did I put that in there or is it the other one?
yeah, no, I totally get it. I mean, there are so many different aspects to each one of the bits and pieces, but it's very easy to follow along. And I don't want to say that you could cherry pick information, but I guess you kind of could and pull that out and follow up with it, just like you did. You followed up with all the little substrates of each one of those chapters, and it's really easy to read. I get really bored quick. I didn't get bored at all with this book.
Thank
So,
you.
and I know that a lot of the stuff that we have available to us now, and again, we had kind of briefly talked about the information that we've got available largely just goes back maybe for human history or for what they would call Homo sapien type life only goes back so far, 10,000 years, 15,000 years, but we know that what we call Earth has been here for a lot longer. There's now talk about how they had the Tartarians and how big they were. And somebody was actually mentioning, maybe I can get you, this is not like anything in the book maybe, but somebody was talking about how it's not possible if you look at those churches and some of the buildings, especially in Europe. I mean, I work in Saginaw, Michigan, and some of the churches there have enormous doors. And it's like, that's not for who we see today. And the shapes of the doors, and that's very common. So I guess the one thing that you know, maybe you can get your opinion on is that they say that to have a human or humanoid that large, it's physically impossible because of the thickness of the bone would have to be to overcome not necessarily gravity, but just the weight of the being itself would be too cumbersome. And I'm sitting there thinking, but even if you put that kind of now science into it, that doesn't mean that's what it was like when those beings were here that built those structures. Because I've also read that our sky used to be more pink, that we had a lot more hydrogen in our atmosphere. So we didn't have this oppressive, heavy atmosphere that we have now. It was much lighter. It was different color. Our sunsets were different colors. So I kind of feel like that really doesn't have any bearing on how can you hypothesize of something that took place tens of thousands of years ago, even if it was just 5,000 years ago. You can't say what that was or what that atmosphere was like. Those beings could have existed. What do you think?
Well, you know, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know anything about they couldn't have existed. I honestly I believe they did, and you know I've even heard that I don't know if I heard or read, but that there were, very large insects and things way back then because the atmosphere was different. But, just to, boil this down, the whole thing, they have found giant skeletons, period. Whatever they're looking at or whatever they're saying scientifically, they have unearthed many giant skeletons. Case closed.
Right. And two, that I think there's, and I don't really understand why. I think maybe because it's like, maybe they feel like it's a can of worms, but the larger institutions and museums are squirreling this stuff away. If it's not already been destroyed, it's more than likely on its way, or hidden, or just hidden. Why you'd want to keep it? I mean,
Yeah.
if you're going to say it's not relevant, then why wouldn't you just destroy it? So, I mean, it's just kind of this, there's a lot of conflicting information and people don't really want to say what's really going on.
They don't want to rewrite the history book. They're too lazy to have to figure it out or think about it. But here's something very interesting in talking about Tartaria. Am I saying that correctly? Tartaria. When you look at the buildings that they are talking about around the world that are huge and that are intricately made, these beautiful buildings here, in the US, I believe, there are some that have been pointed out. Anyway, when you look at these grand cities of Europe and wherever, and do we really know where they came from? Because as we're born and we're growing up and we're going on with our lives, we're not thinking about who built the buildings. And we don't have pictures either of these buildings being constructed. That's what's interesting. Where they come from. Now that someone is mentioning it, where did they come from? Generation after generation have been born and grown up, and nobody walked around thinking about it. They assumed that their ancestors made it, case closed. But no, not necessarily. So now we're going to have to go back and figure it out, where they come from, because it doesn't look like anybody has any record or recollection of it, because nobody really stopped to think about it all these years.
Nope, they sure haven't. They sure haven't. And that kind of rotates back into that human origins and the ancient past, and who were these people? Were they us? How we got seated, all of that. You kind of have some really cool theories that a lot of people have put together. And even the ones where we were seated by ET races. How did they get here? And I think that next chapter, sorry, I just wrote page numbers down, 194.
Okay, all right.
The cosmic freeway, all the gateways, the portals, the wormholes.
Do you want me to talk about a little bit more on the human origin a little bit? Would you like me to touch on that a little bit more?
Sure. If you've got something on it, absolutely.
I do. So I wanted to just point out very quickly the first two chapters, Earthrise, for example. I wrote Earthrise, and I talked about whether or not the Earth has been terraformed. All right, because the scientists, this was really fascinating to me, is that there are scientists that say we don't know how life came to be on Earth. They literally don't know where the grass and trees came from, which was news to me, because we all grew up thinking they knew, but they don't. And they said it's a problem. Some of them finally admitted to that, right? So they're trying to figure it out. They've talked about the Big Bang Theory and all of this stuff, but they're saying we really don't know. So I just wonder if it's terraformed by advanced beings that have the science and technology to terraform world. Could that have been a thing? There is a theory called the panspermia theory, which is the idea that advanced beings out there somewhere sent out seeds of life into the universe and wanted to see where they would land, and they hoped that some of this would lead to intelligent life. in the case of Earth, there is something called directed panspermia, which means somebody specifically wanted Earth to be fertilized and to grow all of these, amazing life forms around us, and they terraformed and they put the seeds here. And I did use an example out of Star Trek for that, because people do identify with science fiction, especially science fiction that they love. So that theory, is in the first chapter, and then the human origins chapter number 2 is where I talked about where humankind came from. Are we a product of extraterrestrial intervention with, it is thought that extraterrestrials either created us elsewhere and brought us here, or used some primate and put, advanced DNA, mixed it together, and then humans were created. Or there's also the theory that humankind are some form of biological AI that was created for slavery or for whatever reason, and became, sentient and free. There is that thought too. Now, the reason that any of these ideas are not so far-fetched is because our scientists are thinking of doing the same thing. They're talking about colonizing planets. They want to start with Mars, okay? And they want to bring in, plants, and figure out how they can grow things and how we can live there. This is not, something we haven't heard of. What our scientists are thinking of doing, someone that is a more advanced race of being out there may have just beat us to it, and I think they did. I think actually there are worlds that are populated. I think that we are living in a galactic community. There are just too many galaxies, too many, planets, too many worlds for us to be alone and the only intelligent ones. One of my theory, the only intelligent race of beings in the universe. There's a show on called Strange New Worlds, which is a Star Trek show. In Star Trek, they were always talking about, exploring strange new worlds. Well, could it be that Earth is the strange new world? Could it be that there are beings out there, there are worlds out there that have beat us to the stars and have already been exploring? And that's what we see sometimes when looking at UFOs, are beings that are here actually on exploring planet Earth. We may just be the strange new world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't really even kind of think of it that way. You kind of flip the picture on it instead of us going out, which is kind of what Star Trek did. It says, gone where no one's gone before, and exploring those new worlds, but flipping the picture on that if they're coming here and exploring us. So that's kind of interesting.
And it could be tied into the human origins. They may be checking up, on another note, they could be checking up on their creation, on how we're doing. When are we going to join the galactic community? That could have been a plan all the time.
Right.
So,
well, one of the things you kind of made an interesting point about was that the whole creation biological AI, that triggered a memory in me where I used to play video games. And I got really hooked on a series called Assassin's Creed, and the very first one, was it the first one? Maybe it was the second one. There's like 9 of them. But there was one where you had to do a puzzle throughout. It was the Ezio trilogy. You had to do a series of puzzles throughout the game, and each one of those puzzles brought you a set of frames that brought you revelation of who you were, who the human really is. And I think what's interesting about the whole concept of this Assassin's Creed game is that this man has some sort of a DNA thread. They put him on a bed, they hook him up to a machine, and he is able to go into another reality and experience what this other character did. And what he does is he's trying to figure out what's going on and who humanity is because it's been hidden from us. And the thing that he realizes through all these puzzles and pictures is that there was a man and a woman who were part of a mass production line who were very basic. They look kind of a combination between human and AI. They broke out, they jumped through a window and jumped out into like a nature area. So that was kind of set it up for what you just said, that idea, that concept has been around for a long time and has been, now it's seated in my head. Well, that's very plausible what you bring up, that we could be that biological AI. If they're thinking about this game that came out, what is it now, 15 years ago? It's been a long time since it's been out there, so it's very possible. Who knows, right?
Who knows? That's why we have to keep the conversation going and think
And
out
then
of the
how did
box.
they get here? How did they even get here if it was terraformed? But the terraforming part also brings up the whole hollow earth idea. And you even talk about that. I've seen it where it's like nesting dolls. The earth is like a set of nesting dolls where it's not just one group of people living inside. It's like a set of nesting dolls where there are different civilizations at these different layers.
Yeah, and it's interesting that most of the world doesn't know that, realize that, have even heard of that. We're standing on someone's home right beneath us, right? So, we've been hearing about the hollow earth, even, the mainstream has heard of the hollow earth, even though they don't believe it, for centuries and centuries. Number one, I'd like to say that the idea of a hollow earth is beginning, the idea is beginning to look like a thing throughout the solar system or the galaxy, even because the moon is also thought to be hollow, possibly shielding a group of beings living there, living inside from all of the heat, coldness, and radiation going on, meteorites. The moons of Mars are thought to be hollow. And Earth is thought to be hollow. So, this may be a thing. And the reason that I say that is because at least one or two scientists have made the comment that it appears that we may be living inside out, and that it would be more logical to live inside a planetary body because that would shield us from chaos on the surface that is causing havoc, death, and all kinds of destruction when it hits. Anytime we might be hit by something from outer space, a meteor or asteroid, or even our hurricanes and tornadoes and the earthquakes and what have you, that causes devastation. They're saying that it would be safer to live inside of a planetary body, is the idea. All right. So with that said, are we living on the surface and there are several beings inside? It looks like that is true. Now, recently, scientists have come forward, and I talked about it in my book, where they have found water, inside of the earth, and they're saying that this is more water than we have on the surface. Someone made the comment, where there's water, there's life. They found mountains and valleys and plains inside the earth, and lots of cavities. All right, and there are holes, apparently from different locations, not just on the poles, but different locations that lead down into Earth. Now, how do we know this? Well, we have what I just said. The scientists have shown that there is a lot of areas that are open. You don't hear about that on the mainstream news, but if you read some scientific journals, or Google it, you can come across this information. You can, name the scientists that are talking about it. I was gonna make a mean comment, but instead, the first thought is, well, instead of Barbie, maybe they should be talking about this. But anyway, that would be, be out there for people to know. But there have been some people who have visited inner Earth who lived to talk about it. And one of these is a Mr. He was an admiral, Admiral Richard Byrd, and another famous person. I put a number of famous stories in there. Some stories you may not even recognize, but for people who are familiar with the information, they may recognize Richard Byrd because he is now so famous. Everybody who's talking about Hollow Earth is talking about him. He was a decorated officer in the U.S. military, and he was sent on specialized missions. He went on one mission where he was airborne, and he came across beings in space, not in space, beings as he was flying that directed him into the inner Earth. And he met these beings, and they said they had been there for eons of time. They had survived, through many of the catastrophes on the surface. He was taken to their leader, who was a very wise and knowledgeable man. And he said humanity had survived catastrophes and that they had come out and helped to get us started up here again. And they said that we were headed towards another catastrophe and that we might destroy ourselves, so to speak, with our behavior on Earth. Long story short, he came back and he reported this information, and he was hushed up.
Yep.
He was told not to talk about it, and he was a dedicated officer, and he said he wouldn't, and he didn't, and this information didn't come out until many, many years later. Now, if we cannot trust a decorated military officer, highly respected, sent on specialized missions to Antarctica area, I think it was, or the Arctic.
Antarctic, yep.
Thank you. And
I think it was both, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a little confusing, but if we can't trust him, who can we trust? He wasn't crazy, or they wouldn't have kept sending him on special missions. He wouldn't be a decorated officer. He didn't lose his mind. All right? And he came back and he told it. So I think, again, I keep saying case closed, case closed. All right? But he's not the only one. All right? And, one thing that I learned while researching the Hollow Earth is that there are tunnels that lead throughout Earth from one end to the other, and where it cuts off, they pick up again. They are there. And there was one place that I talked about in the book. There was a cave in Thailand, and it has its own, it's like when you enter this, it's like its own world. And we didn't know about it until just recently because the passageway was covered up. And you go in there and it's got its own ecosystem, and it's got a lake, and it's got pearls lying all over the place. I found that interesting. It's its own habitat, its own world. And if we've got that right where we can walk in, and we didn't know all these years, well, there could be more, and we don't know how deep this thing goes. And there are other people who have said that they have found their way into inner cities. One guy said that he was on a UFO, and he it submerged and went into a cavern inside that opened up, inside the ocean area. It opened up, and he was taken to a city. And there are others who were looking for the city because they knew someone who had found the opening, and they followed his lead, and they went down, and they found this inner world. And the people, they went a long way. I mean, I'm making this sound like it was so simple. It really wasn't. But the people that they came across told them that their people had been there since what we know to be the Great Flood. And when they got there, they had found advanced technology, and there was no one there. That I thought was interesting. These people who are already existing in inner Earth are saying that their ancestors went down and discovered technology already there. And there are more stories. If just one of these stories is true, and of course I said I believe Admiral Byrd, then that means that the Earth is hollow and there are inner cities. Everybody can't be lying.
Right. Right, exactly. And that, I mean, everything is just kind of knitting together because you have all these cities or these civilizations or I don't even know what else to call them, just settlements. And they're not ETs, they're inner terrestrials. You're
So,
inside, right?
well, yeah, so this is the thing. I guess I didn't talk about that. So in my book, the book is about extraterrestrials, but I talk about intraterrestrials too, because intraterrestrials are like extraterrestrials to us. Um, some of the intraterrestrials that were described are a different color. All right. And they they may, so they look slightly different. Some of them look like us. From what Admiral Byrd was saying, those humans look like us, but then these other guys said they're the tint in their skin was a different color. So what we don't know basically is if these are beings that evolved inside the earth while our people that evolved inside the earth while we were on top, or were they brought in, were they seated there when we were seated here? All right. So, or did they come from out of space in the early days, or even recently, and we didn't see them, who knows, and made a home inside the earth? So, there are caverns being discovered today that are look like there were whole cities of people. We don't know who lived there. We assumed, of course, they were humans that made these intricate towns beneath the city, but they could have been from somewhere else and they could be gone, or they could have gone deeper in. There could have been beings that lived on a world where the sun went nova, or maybe they were escaping for some reason. Heck, they could have been escaping their world due to political reasons. Who knows why a person would leave their home planet? But they could have come here and planted themselves within the earth because it's safer to live there than on the surface.
Boy, that's especially going to be coming true, I think. Eventually, anyway, they keep saying that we're going to have this pole shift, but um, that's a whole nother gig.
Yeah.
Which it has been. It's never stopped. That's why they're saying the GPS is constantly having to be updated, is because the magnetic poles are shifting. I noticed that the moon and the sun rise and set in different areas, even since I've only been in this place since like 2018. So I mean, maybe that's a good way to segue into the battle for the earth.
Battle for the earth.
It's the
You
battle
know,
for the earth, and it's like why are they, you can't hide. If the moon should be and the sun should be rising up in the east over there, and I get up in the morning and it's in a different spot. And I've seen where looks like it's two, but there's enough chemtrails and clouds in that I can't really see, but it looks like there's been two suns very close to the horizon. And by the time it gets up high enough where I can actually see it, it's been one. So, I mean, I've
luckily,
seen that myself, no pictures, sorry about that, but enough people have seen it and have taken pictures of it to know that things are not what has been described to us.
if you tell your average person that, they're going to say, "What? Yeah, I need to get up early and go look at the sun myself. I live right near the beach, and I'm just never, out there looking. I should go and watch the
Yeah,
sunrise."
and two, where the moon rises and sets. That's also another interesting thing. Where the sun, I mean, in the summertime when I was a kid, of course, that wasn't just like yesterday or anything, but I remember being very oriented. I'm not somebody that can, sorry, the dog's bothering me. So when somebody gives me directions, don't tell me left and right. Left and right changes. Okay, north, south. I used to say north, south, east, and west. That doesn't change. So if you tell me it's on the north side of the street, I know exactly where you're going to talk about where it's going to be at. And I'm not so sure anymore after judging where that should be the east. Things come up, probably a good 10 to 15, maybe even closer to 20 degrees further that way. And in the summertime, it's up there and it doesn't go across to the other side. It actually does a swing around to the south. And I'm talking, but this is summertime. That should be where the sun is high in the sky and overhead. You shouldn't have that happening where it's going around in this crescent thing. And it's, it's not rising there and setting there. It's rising there and setting there. It's just bizarre.
It's bizarre, and people are just busy going about their lives, and then they're not noticing anything. They're not paying
They all
attention.
think I have 9 heads anyway, so I'm
No,
good. I
it's
can
not
put
just
that
you.
out
I mean,
there.
a lot of people are saying this stuff,
Yeah.
right? So obviously some people are paying attention, some people are aware. And if you haven't seen it yourself, then like me, I know you who are telling me, you know, and we have seen the pictures because we are in, a community of people that are questioning and writing and researching and paying attention to the stuff. When it comes to the whole idea of the pole shifting, people are, like I said, going about their lives and they're like, that can't, they don't think it can happen. None of what you just described, if they don't believe that's happening, or a pole shift happening, or can happen to them, and especially in their lifetime, they're just not aware of it. And so they read in history that, catastrophes occurred, and they think, okay, that's history. I don't know why they don't think it can happen here now. And they see a lot of people, not everybody, because more people are waking up to these ideas. They see in science fiction, stories about extraterrestrials in the apocalyptic Earth that could be a possibility for our future. And some are like, yeah, that's just not real. It's not going to happen. And others are more concerned. So, we do shows like this, and I write books like this, and we're hoping that people will kind of perk up and pay attention. But I love what you just said. I'm hoping that'll get people out there looking at the sun and questioning
Yeah.
what's happening out there. Yeah.
And
Um,
I was listening to something where somebody was talking about how even just about the fact that they have to update the GPS because of the magnetic poles shifting. And it's like if they're doing that and not saying they're updating these software programs for that, you're not going to really necessarily notice it. You're just going to plug in your destination and it's going to point you where you need to go, turn left here, turn right there, and you're going to go. I mean, I started driving and I didn't have a cell phone and I used maps and a highlighter. I'd go out and buy the maps where I needed to go. I use a highlighter and I would trace my line. And I drove from basically Southeast Michigan all the way over to Western Massachusetts. And that's exactly what I did. And then I would write out where I needed to make my transitions from. You learn how to do that so you're a little more aware of it. But when you're from the digital age, you're relying on this device to tell you your reality. And you can't necessarily trust that. You have to
are,
look outside of that.
are they even making maps anymore?
I don't
Because if
know, but
everything
I
goes
have
down,
I have a bucket load of them. I used to buy an atlas almost, it was probably every couple of years. And I would buy the big maps and I homeschooled my boys. So we would go through and we would look at the maps. They were fun. I was enthralled with maps as a kid. So I don't have any of them anymore, and I used to buy the little annoying, the fold up ones, which I thought was kind of a puzzle in and of itself. But yeah, all over, all the states. And I've determined that I would rather drive than fly. I think it's a better experience. You're going to see more, you're going to enjoy more. And it might take you a little bit longer, but it's definitely a much, much richer experience. Drive it. Go see for yourself. I want to go to the Serpent Mounds. That's within a driving distance for me. They're in Ohio. They're only like 5.5 hours away. I'm going to go there. Everybody's been, a lot of people have been there. They just want to see it.
I haven't.
I haven't seen it. I mean, I'm not that far. We have petroglyphs not that far from me. I mean, it's 90 minutes, but I drive a lot for work, but there's just all kinds of stuff that you could go out and check out. I think I'll skip on the Lake Michigan's Bermuda Triangle thing. I'll pass on that one.
Yeah, don't go through any stargates over there either.
No.
So I'm not quite sure how you are tying this into the battle for Earth, unless you're saying that, we are being kept in the dark by the powers that be. Now, that could be a thing. There's some theory that there is a theory that we are a new species of beings in the universe, and that we are still in our warring stage. We're still primitive behaving. We're more advanced technologically than we are spiritually, and that we just may be shielded from what's really, going on until we grow up as a species and mature, because, it's thought that we are capable of creating chaos within the universe with our weapons and, and our behavior. And within the galaxy, we might be, causing a rippling effect of negativity and evil and and weapons, so that we're kept shielded for now until we grow up. There is that idea. But so that's kind of a battle for Earth, waiting for us to grow up. I guess they're kind of, a battle for keeping Earth, where it is, and we're trying to burst out there and do what we want to, like, I don't know, firing rockets into the eclipse. I don't know. Or when we fired a rocket on the moon, they're, saying, oh my God, look at them. Let's just hold off with them. But no, the battle for Earth could also be so apparently there are extraterrestrials, according to sources from the ancient past, and people who are channeling extraterrestrials, or those who claim to have met extraterrestrials, and the visitations that we've heard about, that from extraterrestrials and Earth's governments. There are some out there that feel they are entitled to Earth, that they've been around longer, and they would like to, to be here, and they are waiting, until they can make their move. They are being kept at bay by what many are saying is a galactic hierarchy, or galactic federation, which falls under my galactic hierarchy chapter, where this federation is said to be protecting us. They're said to be here, and preventing, asteroids from hitting us, and turning off our missiles so that we don't blow ourselves up, and keeping us safe from perhaps evil extraterrestrials that want to, come in and take over Earth. So we are protected because they know that we don't have the technology yet to protect ourselves. So that in itself is a battle for Earth, when we know that there are people out there that might like to have Earth and Earth's resources. This is considered an amazing world with a lot of resources that could be used, by other beings, just as we have gone already to the moon and said, hey, look, there's a lot of helium-3 up there. How can we resource this? Although I don't think so we ever can. How will they actually get that back here? But I'm not a scientist, But I mean, the thought is there. So if the thought is with us, what can we extract from the moon to help Earth? Why couldn't that be a thought from other beings out there when it comes to the Earth? We've already got, reports of spaceships taking water from the Earth. I don't know if you've heard of any of those, extracting water from the Earth. Now, are they taking it to study, or are they taking it because they need it, right? There's been some speculation that gold is being taken from the Earth, which is a very old story from the ancient past about extraterrestrials coming to mine gold from the Earth to use in their atmosphere of their dying world. That would be a species called the Anunnaki, very famous story. We unfortunately have the cattle mutilations, where they have harvested, there are some beings, and I don't know why they got through, or why they were allowed, or how this happened, but it seems that they were harvesting organs from cattle, maybe to study, maybe for themselves, who knows. So that is in itself, those are the battles for Earth. And there's a battle to save us from ourselves. Like I said, there are beings that have, turned off our weapons, and they have been seen around military installations. Are they here trying to help us to not blow ourselves up? Well, that is, in fact, what they are said to have said to one of the Earth's governments. They're not going to let us destroy all of the life here. That is a battle between us and them for life on Earth. So there's stuff going on. I want to just say one of my favorite stories is the stories from medieval times, when they saw UFOs in the skies, but they didn't know what to call them. So they called them shields, flying shields. The only reference to the UFO that they could think of were the shields they carried in hand in war, because that's what they looked like. But there was a couple of news items. They didn't have newspapers. They had to carve, not carve. Yeah, I guess they used wood carvings to report the news. And a couple of them describe wars in the skies where they saw UFOs battling. Now, why were UFOs battling out there, right? And one of them, thousands of people saw them. And one of them said they heard a voice. And the voice said, the gods are leaving. After all of this clashing in the looked like they were so thunderous, and buildings were rocking on Earth and stuff. And the gods are leaving. And I'm like, was that sarcasm? Was there somebody trying to come in to try to do whatever on Earth, and they were being pushed out, these people, these star beings? The gods are leaving. Were they people, in the past, humankind, and I talk about this, guys, in chapter 3, extraterrestrials and the ancient past. Humans thought that extraterrestrial beings were gods. In the ancient times, extraterrestrials lived among us. They walked among us. They flew among us. They came back and forth to Earth, and it has been recorded in some very old writings, the Sanskrit writings, for example. Talk about the gods in India getting on, flying machines and going out there. So we had them among us. And some of us, like I said, we call them gods. And I'm just wondering if when that scenario happened in the skies and they said the gods are leaving, was that sarcasm? Was someone trying to come back in here and live among us again? Because it does appear that at some point they retreated.
Yeah, I mean, did we mention anything? I mean, about the whole Tartarian and the buildings and all that kind of stuff. I mean, are those remnants of those beings or people groups that came in and are no longer? I mean, there's all kinds of scenarios that you could probably come up with, because very few of those buildings are standing today. They're letting them decay and crumble. And I think that they've been lasting a lot longer than what people have been talking about. But there's definitely a battle. And to bring it into the present, I guess, right now, it feels like it's a battle for knowledge, and with knowledge and awareness. And as long as we can kind of couple that with some solid wisdom, because in my opinion, if you have knowledge and awareness and without wisdom, you're like a ticking time bomb. It's only a matter of time before you're going to self-destruct, or you're going to end up hurting yourself or other people or something. But you need to employ a lot of wisdom and discernment involved with that, as far as figuring out the battle. I think that there's a lot of battles going on, and part of it is our awareness and being able to make our own choices and not being forced into doing certain things that we may not want to do. So I mean, that's a big part of it. And I know the one piece that you had in here, that little blurb that you had, which I really loved. You talked about your positive perspective and your desire for things to be on the good side. And even though it's a serious topic in retrospect, there's also that hope and desire, that knowing that we are supported by those seen and unseen from beings that we may or may not know. And you talked about, this may sound like fantasy and wishful thinking. Maybe I am a dreamer. And I thought, oh my gosh, what does that remind me of? It reminds me of, I had to write it down. And some of it says I am, and some of it says we are. And I think it's better to say we are the music makers and the dreamer of dreams. That was Roald Dahl in Willy Wonka. So yes, I think we are, and it's up to us, because that's how invention starts. So invention, he said, my dear friends, is 93% perspiration, 6% electricity, 4% evaporation, and 2% butterscotch ripple.
Wow.
So I think that there's some wisdom there, because it takes a lot of work, 93%. And with our passion is the electricity. And not all of our ideas work out. So we have, some of it has to be evaporated. It has to be stripped off or let go. But that butterscotch ripple, we have to remember that it's gonna be good in the end.
Yeah.
It's really gonna be, it's
like
really
that.
gonna be good in the end.
Yeah.
This is an awesome book. I really enjoyed this book. The other book was a lot of fun, and I'm gonna be probably reading both of them over and over again. But yeah, I think we do. We have to keep an open mind. And we have to do the work. We have to put in that 93% perspiration at least to get it off the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so I just want to let you know, Constance, that I am going to be popping something in the mail to you very soon. Da, 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 da. So I'm gonna send this up. Don't worry, I got two. I got the last two off the shelf, so it was pretty awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I haven't seen that anywhere. I'm so excited.
It was
so
at a
excited.
Lowe's checkout area. It's like, what? It called to me.
My gosh. Yeah, that is a nice keepsake.
Yes, it is. Definitely. I'm not going to be creasing my one. I showed you the bubblegum cards. Those are pretty well worn.
Yeah.
It was definitely a lot of fun. So what would be your roundup words at what you would like everybody to kind of remember?
Do your own research. If you have a question, do the research. Don't just, shut down if you want to know more about extraterrestrials or UFO, and you think the topics are too big. There are so many, there's so much information coming out on our past with extraterrestrials, how we're related to the cosmos, and yeah, do your research, read the books, take in the knowledge, ask questions, keep an open mind, and think out of the box. And I think that if more and more people were doing that and talking to each other and share your experiences, there are tons of podcasters looking for these experiences, UFOs and things. Go and get on one, and just share everything so that we can be more enlightened as to what's going on around us. I guess that's mine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, definitely check out, I will be posting all of Constance's links below, along with the description that came with the book that is posted on Amazon. Her website will also be posted, ConstanceVictoriaBriggs.com, and then her Facebook page link will also be, I tested, I made sure it was good. And then you're also on Instagram at Galactic Briggs. Everything, like I said, is going to be posted in the description below. If you have a mind to do so, please like, share, and subscribe. I am going to put this on not only just YouTube, but on Rumble and Odyssey as well. I'm trying to Put together a few things for myself. I'm going to try and do some weekly things, just whatever off the cuff, just a live off the cuff. Haven't really kind of ironed that out yet. It kind of feels like whatever's relevant, whatever hits me, full force and frontal sort of thing. But anyway, thank you so much, Constance. So much fun. So much
Thank you. It's
fun.
my pleasure to come on. I love talking with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Everyone, be safe. I was gonna say be good, but if you can't be good, just don't get caught. I mean, I don't know how to even say that. Just, be safe, everybody. It's kind of getting a little Looney Tunes out there.
Yeah.
And if you and I the other thing too that I said I was gonna start doing is that I am a certified life coach. I also do mental health work, and yeah, I'm here to help anybody who needs the help. So thank you again, Constance. Everybody like, share, subscribe. Check out Constance's book on Amazon, and blessings.